Alright, so follow up on the review of the BougeRV solar charge controller versus the Victron Energy. So this is a 150/40 amp. This is the Victron 100/20. So maximum input voltage of 100 volts versus maximum input voltage of 150. Maximum charge current 40 amps versus 20. So basically twice as powerful and can take a higher input. I do like the fact that it's got a nice little battery voltage status on the front of it, so you can see exactly what it is. In the case of this, you just have the little blue light that basically tells you, there's voltage, but without opening up the app, there's really no other information for this. Bluetooth built into both. The voltage status on the front of this guy, check this out, and so we've got my voltage meter here, and so this guy is saying 54.5 volts on the front of it, and that's saying 54.3, so within 0.2 volts basically as to what that thing is saying. So come over here, these are the apps for the different ones. So this is the BougeRV app. One thing I don't like about this, you go in there, you can notice I don't have any solar connected to this guy at the moment, but there's basically no battery voltage. It just says battery status is 100%. So this is the new start screen for the Victron, and so any of the devices that you actually have has a little minimized display that gives you some stats. So this is the second one of those charge controllers that's currently running and has about 255 watts coming into it. This is the one that we're going to be comparing to this, and you can see, so you get into here, first thing you see, there's battery voltage, 54.36. So as I said, this is showing 54.36, but the BougeRV is showing 54.5. So it's a little off on its voltage. This is actually much closer to what my voltage meter was actually showing. So it is currently about 12:20 today. It's a completely cloudless sky. This is your basic interface. So here would be your solar coming in, voltage, current, and then state. So it's off because there's no solar. So let's kick on the breaker for this, and we'll see what this guy comes in. Alright, so breaker's on, and you'll see first thing we got voltage 68.5, and it's kind of bouncing around as the MPP starts to figure things out. So right now I have 4 panels connected to this guy. Two sets of panels in series, and then the 2 sets in parallel. They are a combination of 2 300 watt panels, 60 cell panels, and 2 265 watt panels, and those are combining together, and so it looks like we're getting about 9.5 amps at 59.96, almost 60 volts, and we're getting about 573 watts coming out of this. That's giving me about 10.4 amps into the batteries, and you can see my battery voltage right now is about 54.5. I'm actually going to cut off one of my large solar arrays so we don't end up with full batteries, limiting what we can do. As you can see, so that's basically what it's getting out of this set. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this, disconnect this from the Victron, connect this directly into the BougeRV, and see if it gets similar numbers. Alright, so I've got the BougeRV connected up. There's actually a little bit of shade on one of the panels right now, but you can see this thing is saying that I'm getting 55 volts in, and I'm putting out 13 amps and almost 727 watts into the battery, which is a couple hundred watts higher than what the Victron was putting out, and the Victron had no shade on it at all. So let's see what we're actually putting out. Alright, so we're going to take our clamp meter, and our clamp meter says we're putting out 9.16, 9.2 amps to the batteries. But if you come back over here, this thing says we're putting out almost 15 amps to the batteries. So this is an area where the BougeRV, while being well built and definitely working, its built-in numbers are just completely bogus. Now I don't know if this is the case when you're running this thing at 12 volts or 24 volts, but at 48 volts the current sense piece in this thing is just not calibrated correctly at all. So I would say if you're going to use BougeRV, you use this thing with a some sort of battery monitor, either Victron or some other smart shunt, something of that sort, so you can actually see what you're putting into your batteries, what your system's putting out overall. Because the built-in tallies, if you were to just depend on what this thing is saying, your numbers are going to be way, way off. I mean, that's 13.3, 12.7, and again, 9.2. So that's almost 50% off. So here's where the BougeRV does excel over the Victron, is that you can have a open circuit voltage above 100. Going above the open circuit voltage on a charge controller is a great way to fry them. So if your charge controller is rated at 100 volts and your stuff can go up to, in this case, 106, that's 3 panels in series right now, you plug this into the Victron, you run a real good risk of frying the controller. Even if when it puts it into MPPT mode, it's able to lower it, the fact that it's above that 100 volts runs the risk of damaging it. Some of the controllers, like Midnight Solar, they can handle a certain amount of over voltage, but most of the charge controllers will fry. So now we're going to turn on the breaker and we'll watch this thing drop into MPPT mode. Sorry. So there's the breaker flipped on, and you can see there's MPPT mode finding its happy little point, and you can see where the voltage is dropping on down. Now those panels are pretty heavily shaded right now, so we're probably not going to get a whole lot out of them at the moment, but we're going to check back in a couple hours when the shade from my tree is cleared out of the way and everything's in full sun, and we're going to see how these guys compare side to side and who's telling the truth and who's lying. So again, panels are under heavy shading right now. You see the Victron says it's generating about 21 watts. This guy says it's generating 265 watts. Says it's putting in 4.4 amps into the battery. Let's see what it's actually doing. So here's our battery cable here. .77. That's what it's actually putting into the battery. Let's see. So yeah, the unit right now says 3.88 and 209 watts, and we're at 0.71. So now, according to this thing, it says I'm putting in 4 amps at almost 230 watts. But again, 0.74, 0.75. So this is my problem with the BougeRV. In comparison, the Victron, 22 watts, that says I'm putting in 0.51, and if you look at this, you'll see it says current to the battery, 0.5. So it's actually telling the truth over here. Now, as far as construction goes, the BougeRV is well built. It's got a nice metal case, big giant heat sink in the back. I do like the little cover that's just magnet, pops on, that covers up your little terminals. And since you should be able to do larger amperage and more output, the terminals are definitely heavier duty, Phillips / flathead. I like the terminals on this overall better. The ones on my Victron ones are quite small. You don't get a very big terminal for them, so you got to use a relatively small little flathead to get into the little terminals to screw things down. But here's where, you know, if you can't trust the readings on this guy, you're going to need to spend probably about $100 or so on a smart shunt or something of that sort to get an idea as to what you're producing. This guy sells for $149. This guy sells for $149. So you basically, once you add in that, you're basically at $249 in order to really read this. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe the Victron that's basically the equivalent of this, somewhere around $300. We'll take a look at that in just a moment and see. So here's one other little oddity as well. So right now I've got 2 panels in series connected to the Victron, 2 panels in series connected to the BougeRV. Now, with the breakers turned off, the input voltage of the 2 panels in series is almost identical for both of these guys. But with it kicked on and in MPPT mode, this guy is showing that its solar input is 55 volts for the BougeRV. Same setup going into the Victron, I've got almost 63 volts coming in. Now remember, in order to charge your batteries, your voltage needs to be higher than what the battery charge is. So according to this, that solar input voltage number is probably slightly wrong, except for the fact that when I measured it, it actually is pretty close to 55 volts. But it is supposedly charging the batteries. Now the reality of it is, it says it's putting 3.5 amps into them, or 3.2 amps, and it's putting in about 0.5 amps. Meanwhile, the Victron is putting in about 0.3 to 0.5 amps as well. So the MPP section of the BougeRV is probably not as efficient as the Victron is. Again, what you get for the price difference. Okay, so panels are a little bit more sun at this point. Cut off my other solar arrays so that these guys are generating the most. Now, one of the things is when you first go into the app for this, you gotta go to the little Bluetooth and then connect to it. And that is the PV Pro Charge is what this guy shows up as. So we'll hit connect. And now you see where pieces are. Now, again, these are 2 300 watt panels in series. This is 2 265 watt panels in series. You can see this guy is generating around 62 volts, 62 to 63 volts input. This guy is at about 54.6. Now this says it's putting out 11.7 and 639 watts. This says it's putting out 3.5 and about 153. So we come over here and we look at our meter. Instead of the supposed 12 amps that it's saying it's putting into the system, it's actually putting in about 8. In comparison, the Victron, it's this guy here, that's putting out about 3.55, and that says about, yep, so that says 3.2, 3.1, 3, 3, 3.1, and that's basically in line with this. So this is 2.5, yep, down to 1.6, and then back up. So it's pretty much staying in line and matching it. So yeah, so not quite as good. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the third panel in line with this guy, since it can take the higher voltage, and we'll see if that increases its MPPT voltage to anything slightly higher than 53, 54 volts supposedly. So 3 panels in series, we have 107.8 volts. Now we're going to kick on the MPPT. So breaker's now on. Now we're going to watch that. So the MPPT kicks in and adjusts its voltage. And again, just dropping it down to about 62 volts. So a little bit higher than we're getting with 2 panels in series. About 3, 4 volts, maybe 5 volts higher. Maybe as much as 8 volts higher. And you see it's saying it's got about 61 volts. Again, reality, so that says 62.5, it says about 64. So again, voltage is off by about 1.5 volts to 2 volts. And we're getting about 9 to 10 amps. But according to this guy, for once, it's actually showing relatively accurate number. And we're saying 11.4 now, but that's about 9.4. So it's still off by a couple amps, but it's better than it was. So yeah, it really kind of depends. It varies a lot. Okay, so this is the 100/20 48 volt smart solar controller from Victron. I got mine off of Amazon. I want to say it was somewhere around 150-ish. I've seen them, typically they run anywhere between 140 to about 160 bucks. 100 volts input, 20 amps out, built-in Bluetooth, so you don't have to get the Bluetooth dongle like you do with the Blue Solars. So Victron has 2 lines. There's the smart solar that has Bluetooth built in, and you'll see the little Bluetooth symbol, and then there is the Blue Solar type that you have to get the little dongle that connects to it to add Bluetooth to them. This is the BougeRV, 159 bucks. They've got some other solar controllers, but most of the other ones are only do 24 volts. They don't do 36 or 48. So 159, or basically 160 bucks, and you get this unit. Like I said, I like the terminals. I like the little magnetic covering, but as far as I can tell, its calibration is wildly off when it comes to determining what current is actually going in and coming out of this unit. So in order to use this, I would recommend this as a backup solar charge controller, because if you're going to use it, you're really going to need a smart shunt, and those are about another 100 bucks. So if we added another $100, you're at about 260. So for that price, you could get, this is the Victron Blue Solar charge controller, 150 volts input, like the BougeRV, only 35 amps out, so close to the same power, about 266 bucks. But you will also need this Victron Energy VE Smart dongle, which is about $40. So you're about 306 bucks for that versus 260 for the Bouge and a smart shunt. But you could then actually rely on what the output numbers are. All of the Victron stuff that I've had has been very precise. Maybe I've got a bad BougeRV, maybe not. But at 48 volts, its numbers can't be trusted. The alternative is that you can go along with this guy. This is the MPPT 150/45, so a little bit more powerful. This one is the Smart Solar line, so it's got the Bluetooth already built into it. I hate these see price in cart. Add it to a cart, and let's go back. Go over here to the Smart Solar. This is the Victron store, and we can actually see this guy is $345. So about $45 more than the Blue Solar with the dongle, but you're getting 10 amps more output capacity from this unit than you are with the Blue Solar one, and you're about 5 amps more than you are with the BougeRV. The terminals on these higher output Victrons are nicer because they're designed for larger cables. That is the one thing that this little terminal block here, it has relatively small connections for the wires, but it's also only going to do a maximum of 1200 watts at 48 volts. So now remember, with all of these units, if you run them at lower voltage, so 36 volts, 24 volts, 12 volts, you also reduce the maximum output that these guys can put out. It drops off based on, you know, the voltage. The higher the voltage is, you can the more, because the amperage that it can put out to the batteries basically stays the same. So 20 amp solar charge controller can put out a maximum of 20 amps to the batteries. 20 amps at 12 volts is a lot less than 20 amps at 48 volts. That's basically where your maximum output rating for these guys comes down to. So my thoughts on this are, this is a good backup unit. This is good if you need something cheap and you don't really care so much about what the numbers are, or you already have a smart shunt or some sort of battery monitoring system where you can see what your system's producing. I could see this as, you know, something cheap to throw on a shelf for, you know, in case you get hit by lightning and lost your equipment. This would be a good thing to throw in until you can get better equipment back in service. But from my experience, I would say stick with the Victron stuff for this. The Victron would be what I would recommend. It just, you know, you're going to spend as much as, you know, 50 to 100% more for it versus what you're getting here, but you're eliminating having to buy extra gear in order to be able to determine what this thing is actually producing. And that's my thoughts on the BougeRV versus Victron. Good for a backup, not for prime time. Have a nice day.